Always true.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world for
Is that going to be?
A deal wrapped up between Cyprus and the international lenders that leaves the borrower bitter and disappointed. This, of course, on top of that decades-long division of the island between Greeks and Turks. You could say it's a tough time for Cyprus. Europe's financial plague swept onto Cypriot shores after the island nation's banks overinvested in Greek government bonds. Bonds now worth little more than the paper they're written on. But this time, Cyprus is not being purely bailed out, it's also being bailed in. The EU and IMF will give 10 billion euros in loans, but only if the islanders find 13 billion euros to commit to the rescue pot. Where will they get the money? Well, there'll be the usual rise in taxes and cuts in public spending, but also, unusually, Cyprus will be the first bailed-out European economy to be required to tax bank deposits up to 60%. But is there another way? The country has large deposits of natural gas lying dormant under the sea. Lots of money there, but extracting and exporting the gas seems to be complicated by the division on the island and relations with Turkey. Cyprus, 1974. Turkish forces land in the north after Greek Cypriots try to take the island closer to Greece, worrying Turkish Cypriots. A separate state for Turkish Cypriots is declared, recognized by Turkey alone. The Greek Cypriots maintain their independence. Attempts by the internationally recognized government of Greek Cypriots to unilaterally touch the gas reserves prompts cries of foul play from the north and from Turkey. Can the Cypriot government find a way out of the financial and political mess? You'll find out today as the Foreign Minister of Cyprus talks to Al Jazeera. Thank you so much for talking to Al Jazeera.
It's a pleasure.
Would 10 billion euros, and that's the number we understand that the Troika are poised to approve, would 10 billion euros be enough to get Cyprus out of trouble?
10 billion euros renders the debt of Cyprus sustainable around 100% of its GDP by 2020, which I think for the state is enough.
Will there be a tax, is one of the key questions, on deposits over 100,000 euros? And if so, how much?
Well, this is a very big question because now the Bank of Cyprus is going to see by selling banks abroad how much money they will collect, and this is an important factor for the final decision of the haircut.
In terms of how much you might have to turn to deposits, is there a cut-off limit for you? Is there a ceiling?
There is now a 37.5% already decided, and there are 22.5 in a buffer, which amount from this 22.5 will be decided in the months to come.
Okay, so it could be up to 60% if you add those two.
It would be the worst, would be
scenario.
60%, and 40% are saved for these depositors.
All right. Now, how about the reports that you might have to sell your gold reserves? Is that something that's being agreed with the Troika?
No, it has never been asked from them, and we will not sell it. Besides, by selling it, we will get 600 million. Let's leave it as an insurance for Cyprus.
How about privatizations? Are there any strong stipulations that you must privatize certain industries? And if so, what are they?
We are committed to privatize the three profit-making semi-governmental organizations by 2016.
Is there a feeling, there are a lot of tough conditions that obviously you're having to abide by. Is there a feeling that perhaps some of these conditions are too tough, that the EU is putting too many harsh conditions on Cyprus?
The harsher condition, and the one that we are not expecting, and it's the one that we are feeling bitter and disappointed about, is the bail-in, which is taking money from depositors, which is happening in Europe for the first time.
Why?
We have-
Why do you think it's happening to you? I mean, we've seen bailouts in Greece and Portugal and in
Bailout
other
is
places,
one thing.
but now you're having a bail-in. Why are you being singled out for a bail-in?
We have the feeling that we are serving as an experiment in answering the bigger question that has always been around the European Union about whether taxpayers' money should be asked each time that a bank makes reckless management and takes risks, there will be always the taxpayers' money for banks too big to fail, as they are called, to rescue them. And they began experimenting with Cyprus, and it is now obvious that this is going to apply elsewhere in Europe.
Do you think part of the reason has to do with the type of deposits that were here in Cyprus? The suggestion that not all the money was 100% honest money. And that's why, as we heard from some of the German lawmakers when they said, we don't want to bail out mafia money or illegitimate funds. Do you think that has something to do with it too?
This is a fallacy. Most of this money belongs to Cypriots. A lot of money in current accounts were used by Russian companies, 20 billions out of the 69 billions, as a turnover, a continuous turnover, of reinvesting them into Russia. That is why we are the biggest investor of Russia. They are not Cypriot money, they are Russian money, and they are used in a system where it is assured that this money, instead of being lost in the circuit, they go back to Russia, and they are reinvested there.
But you're sure all of that is honest money? There's no money laundering going on? Or?
Through Cyprus, like everywhere, there may be some laundered money that they filter through, but not more in Cyprus than elsewhere. The specialist organizations controlling this thing, and in money there is Manival, but also FATF, have always given us good notes regarding the implementation of the anti-money laundering laws.
So why do you think we've heard such a big fuss coming out of some parts of Europe and accusations that Cyprus doesn't want to play by EU rules, Cyprus doesn't want to really get tough and regulate properly where money is coming from, and we don't want to bail that type of money out? How do you explain that?
Jean-Claude Juncker, the former chairman of the Eurogroup, has protested by the fact that we have been branded that here in Cyprus we are all crooks and gangsters. And this is very, how shall I say, offending for us. I think the ground was prepared in order to arrive to the point of imposing the bail-in for us.
To justify this experiment. Looking at some of the terms of what will be required of Cyprus, and looking at, for example, a Troika report which was released, or a Troika report which was leaked, it seems that even they are admitting that Cyprus is going to be in recession for years. Are you sure this plan can work?
Well, we are not sure. That is the point for which I have said to you that we feel disappointed and bitter. We don't interpret what has happened as European solidarity, but we are resilient people. We have to admit our own mistakes. A lot of problems in our economy was due to our own mistakes. I mean,
like
mistakes.
what? What kind of mistakes? When
For
you look back
instance,
that you say, I wish I did something differently, or we did something.
For instance, the mistakes and the bad management from our banks, and the fact that we relied too much on the financial system instead of diversifying the pillars of our economy.
Nevertheless, sir, the question I've got to ask you, you know there are powerful voices even here in Cyprus. The Archbishop is saying, let's just cut our losses short, leave the Eurozone and declare bankruptcy. If you're not sure this plan can work, and we've seen other countries trying it, and it hasn't, at least the first bailout hasn't worked for everybody else, has it? Is it better perhaps just to, why not leave the Eurozone and declare
We have
bankruptcy?
examined all the possibilities, including the one that you are mentioning, and examined whether we should leave the Eurozone. But then making a sort of comparing the two scenarios, we found that it would be safer and politically very important to remain in the Eurozone and in the European Union.
But if it doesn't work, what's the alternative? Will you come back and ask for another bailout? Is that possible?
It is possible, but we are optimistic that by 2016, the first results of the discovery of important natural gas
Reserves around Cyprus,
reserves
offshore.
in the southern sea of Cyprus, in its exclusive economic zone, will start bringing revenues, and this way we will also be able to repay our debts, and our economy by the end of this decade will be in very good situation. We have to suffer from the first 2 years, then growth will resume again.
Let me ask you, sir, a lot of common citizens that I talk to, they say, why not, instead of making the people pay or the depositors pay, why not make the bankers pay? Let's track down their wealth. Let's find some of the politicians. Let's find some of the regulators who failed. Let's take their money away. What do you say to them?
I have no disagreement with that. In fact...
So why aren't you doing it then?
Wait. The government has nominated 3 very prestigious former Supreme Court judges to make a committee of inquiry, and these issues about responsibilities from the categories of people you have mentioned, they are going to be investigated, and whoever is liable will face justice in Cyprus. But I don't think that this is enough to save us from what we are obliged to do at the moment.
But is it fair to take away the money, I guess, of a depositor who didn't make the decision for his bank to get exposed to Greek government bonds?
Well, you are absolutely right. It's totally unfair. What choice did we have when things have left from the previous government to come to the precipice of both the state and the banks?
I was reading some statements by the Russian leader saying the whole Cyprus affair shows that leaving your money in the West isn't a good idea. Is he wrong?
Well, from what they have experienced in Cyprus, perhaps they are not. But who are me to say what the Russians feel is the best for them?
In terms of, when we look at the root problems of some of this crisis, at least, some of the Cypriot banks were merging with Greek banks that were also overloaded with Greek government bonds. I know there's been some review of the decisions made, and I guess the question really is, do you want to tighten that regulation so that that can't happen again in the future? And if so, wouldn't that put you into conflict with the EU rules about the free flow of capital and debt and money across borders?
Exactly. We cannot do things
Both.
that are not allowed by the Eurozone and the free movement of capital. As soon as we are allowed to relax to the strict regulations that have been temporarily imposed, then the movement of capital will flow free. We expect that we cannot base our economy on a financial system anymore, but on a business international center, yes, along with tourism, along with inviting investors to come to Cyprus and invest in real estate and in other areas, including the derivatives from natural gas, petrochemicals, etc.
If we could talk about the issue of natural gas now, do you think that perhaps one aspect of this whole crisis is that it gives everyone an incentive to resolve the differences between you and the authorities in the north of the Cyprus, as well as with Turkey?
Well, the moment chosen and the fact that Turkey is so eager to take advantage of this opportunity and begin negotiations now that we are on our knees, it creates exactly the opposite feelings regarding ourselves.
That makes you suspicious of them, does it?
Not only suspicious, but it is obvious that this is the case, we are certain. That is why we say that the time is not ripe for us to resolve the problem immediately, a problem that is there since 1974 at least.
Why not call their bluff? If you think that they're trying to take advantage of you, isn't that what negotiations are for? Isn't that what diplomacy is for? Is it really not possible to reach an understanding which would allow everybody in the region to enjoy the benefits of the natural gas that exists here?
You're right. We'll resume negotiations as soon as the government can focus on the negotiations for resolving the problem with Turkey. But it will take us a number of months before this is so, until we have taken all the necessary measures and all the necessary decisions to get the economy restarting again. I am not saying that the negotiations should begin after we recover from the economic difficulties, but after we have put in place all the necessary decisions for the restarting of the economy.
How soon do you see negotiations restarting?
I'm not putting it into years, but into months, let's say by the end of the year.
In the meantime, what is your response to the Turkish proposal that if you can't sort out the problem, the political problems here in Cyprus between the north and the south, why not at least form a joint committee and explore the natural gas together and share the proceeds together? Is that an option for you?
The natural gas belongs to all Cypriots, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, and certainly that part of the fund that will be destined to support the younger generations of Cypriots through scholarships, research programs, education, all Cypriots will benefit from it from the moment the revenues are coming into the island. But you cannot imagine ourselves taking the money and giving it to the self-proclaimed entity that is not recognized by nobody but Turkey and that is condemned by the Security Council. We cannot do this. But of course, after a settlement, and why do we get all agitated and Turkey so much stressing this point? Because we are talking that revenues may come in some years from now. Are they condemning, or are they so sure that we will not resolve the problem by then?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, so you're saying the idea of a joint committee is not on. You have to solve the bigger political question has to be solved in Cyprus, and then you can talk about what happens with the gas.
Absolutely. Instead of talking about a joint committee, let's have a joint government following an agreement about the settlement of the problem.
In the meantime, though, will you unilaterally drill off the shores of Cyprus without the sort of coordination, shall we say, with the authorities in the north? And I know you don't recognize them, and much of the world doesn't as well, but will you then go ahead in that meantime, before you've resolved the bigger question in Cyprus, will you go ahead and drill unilaterally and explore?
Let me say to you that in view of the development that is taking place in countries like China, India, and so many other countries in the world, and the increased demand in natural gas, which is also environmentally friendly, do you think that humanity is fair to sit down and wait until the Cypriots decides and Turkey allows the settlement of the question of Cyprus? No, we will proceed. We are the sovereign government of this country. We will proceed, but as I have said to you, after the settlement, which I hope will be sooner than the revenues from the natural gas, then this will be shared by all Cypriots, also at the level of local federated components of the future state.
So you're hopeful that the division on Cyprus will end before you're getting money back from natural gas in 2016, I think you said? Do you think that's really?
The earliest, if Total is successful in finding petrol, which doesn't need
Conversion.
LNG and all these things,
Yes.
it can go ahead and be exported. Well, let me tell you that if there is political will, and if Turkey abandons what now is put on the table, which phenomenically is described as federation, but actually it's a description of two separate states, something that we will never accept, then yes, it is possible.
So what is the division? I mean, there are those who would argue there was the UN plan in 2004, which was accepted in the north of the country, but rejected in the south.
Accepted in the north when they were sure that it will be rejected in the south.
Never mind. There are Turkish proposals, which you've made very clear you don't find acceptable. There are those who would say then what is acceptable? What is your vision for how to resolve this division?
We have always accepted, and everybody knows this, a system of bicommunal, bizonal federation, and we have accepted that in an equitable settlement of the territorial issue and the issue of properties, then we have a settlement.
Is there any reason, though, sir, that you would believe that those in the north of the country will accept that now when it obviously hasn't for so long? Why would they find that acceptable now?
Well, this question should be put to them and to Turkey in particular, who is calling the shots.
But from your perspective, is there an incentive? What's your message to them if they're watching this interview now?
Well, we have been talking now that there is an additional incentive, the natural gas. So wealth for everybody.
What is your alternative when you get to the point when you want to export gas? If problems haven't been resolved within Cyprus, problems with Turkey, isn't that an issue for you? Isn't Turkey the most natural marketplace, the closest place to export the gas to?
Perhaps with a pipeline, yes. But with an LNG where you can sell east and west, north and south, why should be Turkey the only market which can turn the tap anytime they want to, turn it off?
An LNG facility.
You remember the examples with Ukraine.
The LNG facility, though, sir, analysts point out, will take a lot of time, a lot of money to build. Will Cyprus have that kind of cash? You'll be struggling under recession.
It will not be built by us. It will be built by the companies that have international companies, renowned companies that have got the concessions. And it's them now who are interested in made good profit out of the money they will invest, and not Cyprus. So if Turkey has problems, Turkey has to face them. Companies like Noble Energy from the United States, Total from France, Eni from Italy, and Kogas from South Korea.
Do you have indications from some of those companies that they would be willing to put up that sort of investment and capital to make an LNG plant?
What's the point in buying the contracts and in making agreements with us? The agreements...
Well, because there's always a possibility, I guess, you could export it by pipeline to somewhere else at some point.
But you know that the agreements have contents in them, and they are committed, and they have deadlines along the road when they will begin bringing royalties to Cyprus.
A final question then. When I spoke with Turkish officials recently, they said, when the UN plan of Kofi Annan was put to Cyprus, your current president was in support of it. Why is it a bad idea now?
Listen, a politician, a president, always has to respect the will of the people. He cannot ignore the decision of the people and bypass it. This is extremely difficult. But I doubt whether Turkey is ready to accept the same plan again. At the negotiating table with former President Christofias, what it was put there was much, much tougher than the contents of the Annan plan itself from them.
Thank you so much, sir, for talking to Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much.